good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time is it for you. Welcome to Thursdays with Procurement League. What we're going to do is for the next 45 minutes to an hour, we have two excellent trainers, teachers, procurement gurus who are going to share about how their procurement training has evolved over the years. I know, Martin, yours is just kind of like getting into shape and taking
Indeed.
shape after decades of learning procurement and working in this space. And I know, Jim, you've been in this space for really long. So it'll just be really good to hear two different perspectives on what procurement training looks like. What differences do you bring? What similarities do you bring? How your culture, your countries, your backgrounds impact the way that you train and just like work around the space of procurement. So I'm really excited. Being a teacher for gifted kids on the spectrum myself, I love teachers, and I just feel like they bring something excellent whenever they get into a conversation. And Tina, like, feel free to jump in and heckle and chat and challenge us whenever you feel right. I know that's why you're here, so that's great. But over to you. I'm gonna let Martin, you introduce yourself first.
Really, okay. So I think firstly, there's such a fantastic billing that you've given me, Devangana. I really hope that I can live up to it. I mean, I've never been called a connoisseur before, and certainly not been called Stella. I mean, it's quite exciting to be as part of the panel along with Jim, who's way more experienced than me. But so my name is Martin John. So I've spent 25 years in industry as a procurement practitioner in various sectors. So automotive is where I started my career. And I went into packaging and did a bit in food, and then lastly, actually in tobacco and nicotine. So I left that after 25 years, and I've always had a real desire I love communicating, I love people, and I like to help people. So I've done lots of kind of training within work while I was in the companies I worked for. But I thought, really, I'd love to give it a go and start my own training business. So two things I teach are, firstly, procurement, why we're here, right? So procurement I teach because I've done 25 years there. I have picked up one or two things along the way. I have some expertise, technical expertise in that area, although not as much expertise as some people on your platform, and indeed some people who are on this call today. So I know my place. So I'm not professing to be a procurement expert by any means. So that's the first bit I teach. The second bit I teach is personal effectiveness, which is way more broader than just procurement. So it's applicable to all businesses and all business functions. So those are things like negotiation, because we all need to know how to negotiate, right? It's communication, it's assertiveness, persuasion and influencing, and also time management. So I'm really fascinated by those topics, and actually I think I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay with them. I can do those. So that's why I teach those. So I do these teachings face to face, which is predominant in the UK, but also remotely as well. And now with the technology we have at our disposal, which is fantastic, I think I put on a decent, engaging and interactive remote experience as well. But it takes a lot more energy to do that. You know, I'm on coffee and Red Bull for hours before just to get myself into the right space. So that's basically me. But the last thing I'd like to say is, so what my business is about is teaching people with the basics, but teaching them well and teaching them with high engagement, high involvement, lots of emphasis on the practical side to ensure that they get it and they can deploy what they've learned basically immediately within their organizations. So do the basics well. That's what I'm about. Thank you for that.
Can I ask a clarifying question before I get to Jim? So Martin, your trainings, when you're saying they're in person but also virtual, are they modules or are they like live?
No, they're live. It's synchronous training.
Got it. It's all synchronous or in person.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right. So we have something a little different with Jim. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Jim.
Thank you, Devangana. Very similar to Martin, but a little bit different focus. I've been in I'll call it supply management space, probably about 25 years in the corporate area. working, and maybe a little bit longer because I started out in retail, hard goods retail, and then migrated to in-home patient healthcare provision of consumable supplies, equipment, and RX for about 8 years, and then migrated to the office document management industry and spent almost 20 years in that space. And most of that has either been as a warehouse manager, even a delivery technician. So I've kind of done almost all the roles in the supply management space, from equipment maintenance, ordering, warehouse operations, supervising buyers, creating purchase orders, all of that stuff. And then migrating into liaison with the corporate shared service functions as my internal customers and meeting their requirements, which was an interesting space. It's something that I hadn't considered. Yet they asked me to do it, and based on my prior success in the, I'll call it hard goods, but consumable supplies even, especially in the document management space. The services, of course, they migrated from tactical up to strategic as I proved my worth, right? And success breeds more work. And I firmly believe in that. And if you have success, then word spreads. And that's what happened to me. You're working with one department and you meet their requirements, and then they talk to their counterparts in other departments, and all of a sudden you're migrating from HR to accounts payable, to accounting services, to customer service administration, to even legal, helping them source third-party legal counsel, which is very rare in this space. So, a lot of diversity. And then they moved me into category management by default. They said, they need me to take over because the old category manager retired unexpectedly. And the funny thing was, he was going to report to me before he retired. So they said, we're not going to hire anybody. You need to take over the role. And that was in the software development space, which I had no experience in. So continuous learning, continuous openness to experience new things and master them if you can, if anybody can be said to. Along the way, as many of you know, I became a member of the professional organization from the Institute for Supply Management in the local Philadelphia chapter. I actually joined their board in 2013 and started to engage with them first as a board director, and then all of a sudden they wanted me to step up into the leadership succession path.
I think we lost Jim. All right, till we get him back, Martin. So I'm kind of really excited to begin hearing about how do you design training? Like what goes through your mind to A, design training for procurement, but B, also have the market edge that is needed into designing the trainings that you design. So how do you go about it? I mean, in this busy world where everyone's a trainer, everyone's a coach, everyone's a guru, how do you do it?
I'm really concerned by a couple of things you said now. Everyone's a trainer, and how to get
I mean, there's a lot of procurement modules and trainers and procurement leaders.
Yeah.
How do you design your training to maintain your unique edge?
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, there's a number of kind of standard steps, right? So it starts with the customer, doesn't it? It's like, what does the customer want to learn? So what is the experience of their current team? What's the makeup of their current team? Where are their capability gaps? So that's where it starts. So it's always got the customer in mind. You must address the customer's needs, kind of, rule one kind of thing. And then secondly, just like with any training course, whether it's assertiveness or persuasion, I just do a heap load of reading. Collected from, books, journals, subscriptions, stuff online. There's loads of newsletters that people are publishing that are really interesting. There's YouTube and, free stuff. And then, of course, after that, I think about what's the core things of this topic that I need to consider, the must-haves of this topic. Okay, so for negotiation, for example, it could be trading and using tradables and a wish list to improve your and bargain to get towards a solution. So that'll be a must-have. Then I think about, okay, so what else have I come across in my research? Okay, and then what's new? What are the trending topics, so to say, at the moment, and do they fit with the course that I'm trying to design? So it's that process. It's that kind of agglomeration of information from all over the place, bring it together, make sense of it, and then create a mind map of how that's going to be structured. And then after that, it's just the same as building any course, whether it's procurement or anything else. In terms of the edge, Devangana, it's very early days for me to be saying about an edge. I don't perceive I have an edge at the moment, but what I would say is I like to feel that I can engage with people. And whether that's remote or face-to-face, I think I can make that connection. And I'd say that would be my perception of my edge, if I had to be put on the spot and say that. Does that answer the question in full?
That does. I can ask you a quick follow-up before I move to Jim. So tell me, for every client that you work with, or that you will work with, you envision kind of like customizing the training through a need-based analysis of what their needs are. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Now, of course, many clients are going to articulate their needs, and they're likely to be very similar to many other pieces of work I've done on that topic. So the level of customization is it can vary greatly from customer to customer. Some have very specific needs that they want addressing. Others are more kind of generic.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for that. That's just great to hear, kind of like, just reiterated some things that we probably knew. Jim, how do you go about, I know that you've recorded a lot of modules on procurement training. And you've been a procurement trainer, unlike Martin, for way longer. I know Martin spent like 25 years in procurement and he just started training of his own. Whereas Jim, you've been training for really long. How do you go about designing trainings for procurement? Has that changed over the years? What goes into you planning those modules and, saying them? And Jim, sorry, I'm going to ask you one last question to this. How do you know that it's having the impact that you hope for it to have, since yours, many of them are recorded in modules of training?
All good questions. As far as how long I've been doing the training, it's actually been, I would say, probably about 7 years off and on. Because even when I was in the corporate world, I got involved with mentoring higher education students at local universities. And that's when I got the training bug, because the satisfaction level that I received in doing that mentoring was so high, and the feeling that I received, the satisfaction level I received in doing so was so high that I said, when the time came and they started talking about outsourcing my corporate job, I said, okay, now it's time to start this, right? As far as the material that I put together is based on best practices, and all the best practices that I learned and studied when I was taking my certification courses, when I was taking my best practice courses with the Institute for Supply Management. So almost all of that is based on those best practice competencies throughout the entire supply management space. And I'm a firm believer in the totality of supply management and how everything is interrelated, including how communication skills plays into it, how relationship skills play into it, both external and internal. So every course I taped has interjections of what you need to do if you're going to succeed. Anybody can learn how to do the technical pieces, right? And they can be taught how to do that, checklist or whatever. But developing the relationships is a special thing, and not everybody can learn how to do that. So by giving personal examples, and I always interject them into the videos that I taped, I have done some live, and I did the same thing there. I put together one when I first started my business on corporate social responsibility and ethics in supply management. And that was a 2-hour seminar, and that was for a particular company. And that went very well, was very well accepted. I don't know if they're going to bring me back for a refresher course because it's been 2 years, so maybe at the third year they'll want to do a refresher course. I'm not sure, but I still have a relationship with that team. Ongoing, I put together some live presentations. In fact, I'm giving one on the 15th on a very nice topic called ESG and DEI and how it relates to supply management roles and functions. In other words, what can procurement contribute, or what should procurement contribute to DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and environmental, social, and governance? That's going to be an hour presentation. And it was supposed to be live at one of our local universities. They just changed it to virtual. So I'm trying to get back to doing live presentations in the US, but there's a lot of resistance on that. So we do what we can, but in the virtual space, there are ways to do it. You do breakout rooms, you do case studies and what have you. So all these things factor into what I teach.
Yeah, there's
But
nothing like nothing like the buzz of a face-to-face though, Jim, is there? I did one the other day in London, and I think people were so relieved and so happy to be back together again. I mean, the excitement, even though it was a really dry topic, right? The excitement was palpable.
Oh, no. In fact, I did attend one. My local professional organization has connected with 5 other logistics-focused organizations in the area, and we get together once a year, and each year one of the organization hosts a speaker. Oh, I think we lost.
I'm still here.
We lost everybody. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you. You're right here. Jim, we got you.
Jim.
Yep, you're with us.
Yeah, you're there.
Hi. So Martin, till Jim figures this, I'm just curious, do you want to go down the route of recording modules of training and lessons and all of that, or are you just happy with the synchronous and in-person form of training?
Yeah, I've got stuff like business insurance to think about, and marketing stuff, and finding customers, more customers. Devangana. It is in the plan. I haven't got anything asynchronous, anything recorded at the moment, apart from a few little videos and stories on YouTube on my YouTube channel. But it is in the plan to do a course in the future. I've actually started writing it, and it's taken me absolutely ages, and the planning is just phenomenal behind it. So yeah, let's see. Stuff is getting in the way at the moment. Oh, there's a cat now.
Yeah, that's my cat in the way. He likes to make himself seen. So can I ask both of you a quick question before I move on to the next? How do you measure impact with asynchronous trainings? Martin, if you ever get into those as you're planning them and as you're writing them, and Jim, I mean, how do you measure, the impact to keep going on, and how do you figure that out?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. I think probably the best way I've been able to measure is the after the fact chat, whether it's in LinkedIn or whether it's third party to me from my professional organization, what have you. I had an interesting one occur based on my prior experience and working, and this is when we were doing direct pre-COVID. Um, my reputation has begun to precede me.
I love that.
You know,
I'd kill for that.
but this is higher education students, another university in the area, and they start saying that they really want to make sure that I'm engaged with them, you know, which tells me that I'm having an impact. And granted, higher education students are probably one of the main targets. However, in the U.S., there seems to be a growing push to get into the secondary education space. You know, rather than elementary, it would be the high school in the U.S. Um, but in other areas of the world, it's secondary education, and you know, start on them young and get them engaged and enthused about supply management, because that helps them, right? Gets them an early start and helps their career start early. But one of the things that I always try and push for, and I really haven't seen any evidence of it yet, possibly because COVID has impacted things. The economy has impacted things. So my courses aren't being purchased, but they're inexpensive enough where I think they can be. And at the end of a series of those courses, I bundled them together, they can obtain professional education units, sort you know, CEHs, CPEs, whatever you want to call them. And once that starts happening, then I will know that I will be able to measure it even more effectively. You know, but that's the challenge right now. And part of it's due to the economy, part of it's due to the world macro environment, and part of it's still residual from COVID.
Give you a little story here on this topic. So Tina and I have been trained by this absolute master in asynchronous training. He's all over Udemy and he's all over LinkedIn Learning. Something like 500,000 people or 250,000 people have taken his project management course. And then he's got like 30 other courses on there. Guy's called Chris Croft. He's amazing. So he's the benchmark that I'm aiming for. If I can get 250,000 learners to take my course, then I know that I'm hitting the spot. But I think that's going to be some years off yet.
Okay, can I ask two really interesting questions, which are kind of related to what you both said, right? What I notice, having been in the space of education for really, really, really long, what I notice is at the end of the day, everyone is kind of giving the same trainings in negotiation, in, management of teams, in leadership, and all of that. Like their style might be a little different, but at the end of the day, the core message is the same. So a lot of times, the predictability of what's to come, what's to be said, what's to be heard, all of that becomes very, very common and very, very heard, which means sometimes some people are looking for something new. They're just bored with the rhetoric. How do you kind of think, how do you think, these trainings which are on Udemy or on Coursera, or, like these mass modules and trainings, which are catering to thousands of students in the space of procurement, and they're all teaching the same thing. How do you kind of find an edge through that? Because, the market is expecting these students to come out and say the same thing. Now, how do you, how do you work through this where everyone's doing the same thing? But B, how do politics also impact how you're training, what you're training, what edge you're giving, what kind of a snide entry are you giving to people? So I'm just curious about, you know, there can't be too much different stuff that you guys teach. But now, if everybody in the space of procurement is saying the same thing, then who's doing something different? So that's one. And two,
That's,
how do
okay.
I mean, I'm
I'll need to
sorry,
make a
I'm
note. I'll
sorry.
need to make a note. That was a multi-composite, multi-layered question you just gave us there.
Yeah,
I'm
right?
stalling
Like,
for
I
time
mean,
now. You can tell.
I'm just very curious. That's one. And two, how do the UK or US politics, which are very interesting and dynamic, impact procurement? Because a lot of the supply chain is impacted by what goes on in politics. So just these two questions, if you could kind of like get into those and answer those.
You want to take this one first, Jim?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. As far as how to differentiate, what I have tried to do, I'm relying primarily on LinkedIn because I've not had good experience in the Facebook space with the topic subject matter. There doesn't seem to be too many takers on the Facebook side for the professional education in that space. But LinkedIn, I feel, has a captive audience. And by reaching out to the various groups on LinkedIn that are focused in this particular professional space of supply management in all of its aspects, and then designing the LinkedIn communications to announce the availability of a new video or the availability of a new series of courses or bundled material that is available for purchase, and what the benefits for that particular subject matter will be to the student, and what benefits are going to be at the various levels of competency that they are at the current time, whether it's a beginner, whether it's a middle level professional, whether it's a manager in whatever relative level they are at within their company, or if it's a leader. So, and my material covers the entire gamut of those competencies. So, that I think in and of itself makes me unique. There is one other major competitor, which happens to be the professional organization I belong to, and their tactic is similar, but the way they go to market is different, right? And they give discounts and what have you. I give discounts, but so that doesn't differentiate us. I think what the biggest differentiator is I try and make it personal for each and every one of my potential customers through those questions that I ask in the initial release announcement. As far as the politics goes, there are certain topics that lend themselves to the tightening of credit, and other issues that do occur within the supply management space, like the tariffs and what have you. But most of it, I think the major impact is always on relationship management. And relationship management plays such a huge space at each and every level that I teach about. The beginner, the middle, the manager, the leader. That relationship management skill set is so critical that without it, if you're just following a checklist, you miss the boat. And while you might have a 50% success rate or even a 60% success rate, if you have the sound relationship management, that jumps dramatically, probably upwards of 85% success rate.
All right. Thank you for that, Jim. Again, Martin, for you, the same question, but I'm just
Yeah.
curious, if everybody's doing the same thing, like all procurement students who graduate from procurement training are saying the same thing, then who's saying anything different? And does that predictability of what is going to be
Yeah.
said by procurement folks hurt the trade rather than help the trade? And have you thought about that, A? And B, Does politics play any part
Got it.
in your trade?
Yeah, okay. So I think I'll answer very honestly. So as I said at the start, right? So I'm trying to equip people with the basic skills to do their jobs. And there's fresh, just like there's people retiring at the top, there's new influx of people every year coming into procurement, hopefully. And also there are companies that are in different stages of maturity as well in their procurement journey. Some companies I deal with don't even have kind of proper, what I would say, proper procurement. So there's always opportunity there. And when of course I'm teaching the basics, you are going to be given those standard things that the people would expect, those basic building blocks of to become a procurement professional that they need to do their jobs effectively. So I'm not professing to be cutting edge and talking about digitalization and all that stuff. That's not what I'm about. So I think almost, it's not, it's just about doing the basics well for me, Devangana, frankly. And that's where I'm gonna focus. I'm not gonna try and be all things to all procurement people. Definitely not what I want to do. And another thing while I'm on this topic is that I really like Jim said earlier, where he discovered that he had a passion for training and you've got an enormous amount of satisfaction from training. That's what brought me into training in the first place. And so the last thing that I want to do is start thinking about topics that are hot, that are outside of my wheelhouse at the moment, just to add them in so I can have a broader product offering, because that would suck the soul out of me, because I wouldn't be doing it for the right reasons. I'd just be doing it so I could, trend higher on Google or LinkedIn or whatever. So I'm deliberately choosing to do things that I really am passionate about and I really enjoy. And yes, there'll be a lot of repetition on some of those basic building blocks. But again, it's how you get that message across and how you connect authentically with the learners, and hopefully they'll take out something different from the way I teach it, which is unique to Jim, and Jim is unique to everybody else, and so on. We all have our place. That was the first bit of your composite question. Second bit, politics. What I can think of is that politics has a major implication on public procurement and the rules and governance around that. And that's not a space that I'm playing actively at the moment. And whichever kind of hue of government is in, whether it's Rishi or whether it's someone else, I'm not sure how big an impact that's going to have on public procurement policy, other than the amount of money that they have to spend. So they need to get better at it.
I think Jim and Martin both hit on the key of of what can make you different, and that's actually the making sure, even if it's the basic building blocks, whether it's really complicated, it's that linking in with the client, having that initial interaction and understanding. It's not having here's my off-the-shelf course, this is how I always do it. It's actually which bits are important to you, where are your aims, what are your objectives. And I think both Martin and Jim mentioned that, and I think that's absolutely key to any training course that you do, and that will be the edge, because then the client knows that they are getting what they need, not just what you want to flog them.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So Jim referred to a professional body. Professional body in the UK, well, globally is CIPS, and their courses are of a very high standard, and questionably, but it's taught to a syllabus which is quite rigid and can't be necessarily tailored to the client. So I think that's where an independent trainer would have an edge.
Yeah, and Martin, I would actually agree with you there. It's the ability to customize, the ability to meet the client's needs, like when I did that corporate social responsibility and ethics and supply management for that one customer. Didn't take me long to put it together. I could have turned that into a 4-hour or 8-hour seminar, but the client said, I really can't release my team that long. Can you do 2 hours? I said, sure, but I'm going to have to take out some of the stuff that I really would think would add value. So we didn't do breakout rooms, but I did a lot of polling because it was virtual.
Yeah.
And try to reinforce, those issues that I think are very critical, and to transfer that knowledge appropriately.
But you're right, Jim. But and even with pre-recorded training, right? You can do it in really small, divisible chunks. so that the client can actually select and bundle together these small little nano training sessions or whatever that they like.
I call it micro learning.
Yeah, micro, yeah, perfect. Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, when I put together my videos, the sourcing competency, I have 10 classes on that.
Yes, you can just
and they can cherry pick whatever they want,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah,
You know,
it's quite versatile actually.
On risk, I have 11 classes. On supplier relationship management, I have 11 classes. So they can pick and choose, if they want to go that route, or if they want something customized on site even, and I clearly make sure that I communicate that I'm available for on site. I mean, I've got my boosters and everything else. I got to get one more, but it's one of those things where it really comes down to the customer's risk acceptance level as to whether they're going to do on-site or off-site, whether they're going to do virtual or whether they're going to do pre-recorded. So I started with the idea that, if I do pre-recorded and self-paced, then it makes it easy. And then I could sell an entire bundle, right? An entire cohort or an entire 3 cohorts, as seat rights or license rights, but really that's up to the individual customer.
So Jim and Martin, what I also see is, as somebody who's led really big teams and as someone who's worked I've taught inclusive classrooms with highly gifted kids and kids with very low level of intellect. All at the same time, I've taken some courses from top universities, Princeton and Harvard and Yale, and which were all pre-recorded, but remoduled them, rewrote them to meet the different needs. So I think sometimes it also depends on, you could record a standard module, but for the person who's leading these teams can kind of differentiate it based on the different team members that they hope to train in the space.
Precisely.
Devangana, like I mean, you and I have a similarity there, and maybe some of my outlook on life has been colored over the last 33 years. That's how old he is, of having that position on the spectrum, right? So, I understand where you're coming from, and you're absolutely right. Understanding the need, understanding the style that will get the message across is very critical. And that is paramount, but first must be supported by understanding the client.
For sure.
And it's not just limited to the spectrum.
No, way, not at all. It's
yeah. So to what extent has your complicated question been answered, Devangana?
It has been. So I was just curious if everyone in the space of procurement is doing and learning the same thing. Are you bringing anything different? And I think what both of you brought to that answer was very extremely helpful. So thank you for that. Okay, so my next part is, both of you have been in the space of procurement now for decades. And probably when you started off in this space, Martin, 20 years ago, Jim, probably around the same time, you must have seen trends change a lot in the space of procurement. What do you think are the currently evolving trends in the space of procurement? And are you designing your current or upcoming training based on what you saw or what you hope to see evolve? Like how do you kind of plan, since things keep changing?
Yeah, should I go first on this one, Jim?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So I kind of answered this question with the previous one, where I'm a believer of sticking to your knitting, as they say in the UK, right? So play into your strengths, and also considering that what I teach, I really want to enjoy teaching it, so that I give the delegates the best experience they can, and also the higher likelihood they're going to change the way they think, feel, and act after they've received my training. So, but the topics I see, Jim's already all over one of them. So ESG, environmental sustainability and governance. So that is absolutely fundamental in procurement right now. It's very high profile, and I do believe that procurement has an enormous potential to positively impact the world, but closer to home, our suppliers in the supply base, by really driving home those ESG requirements into the suppliers. It's a huge challenge, but procurement is best placed out of any of the functions within the company to do something about it. The second thing that's relevant to this group is digitization. I mean, digitization is a massive topic. So we can talk about, automation of simple tasks, supplier engagement, digitization, online learning, and so on. Again, that's absolutely current, and that will grow and grow, but not something that I'm going to touch in my training at the moment, at least, for the reasons that I explained earlier.
Amazing. Jim,
Yeah.
what are these evolving trends in the space of procurement, and how much of your training caters to what is going on, and what do you hope or what do you predict is going to change in the space of procurement?
I agree with Martin that the trends are ESG. It's very important. I focused going all the way back to 2000 and when the United Nations put together the Global Compact. And the Global Compact is the basics. And that has to be communicated, and it has to be taught in a level that people will understand why ESG is so important. So starting everything with understanding the basics is critical, especially in the ESG space. But I'll move on to the technology and the digitization and innovation that comes along with increasingly progressing technology. It's there. You need to understand it. You need to understand how to source for it if you're in the sourcing space. You need to understand how to implement if you're in that space, et cetera, et cetera. And that is, you collaborate with partners. So your collaboration skills must be on par. But you have to understand the process basics of what you're trying to do. And understanding the process basics, you need to go back to the days when everything was manual and understand what you needed to do manually, which is now being made easier by digitization. So even from the fact of setting up a new supplier, do you have your checklist in hand? And you make sure that everything you need to have in order for automation to work is on your checklist. If not, then your automation may not work. Stuff like that, right? Need to understand all the specifications of a particular item that need to flow into a purchase order and or an item set up for your warehouse in order for them to allocate space in the warehouse for that item on the shelf in location planning. How do you do that? Manually, you would have had a checklist. Manually, you would have had somebody drawing it out on drafting paper. And if you've done that, then you're well ahead of the curve in terms of allocating space, even just out planning out a warehouse, physically going and tagging the bins rather than GPS mapping an entire warehouse floor. So all of these things, if you understand the basics, then the digitization piece will come a lot easier. So focusing on the basics is first and foremost. And you can do it in a way that migrating to the digitization then becomes easier to understand. Oh yes, that'll save me time. Oh yes, that'll give me automated controls and save my company money. Oh yes, on and on and on.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I guess there's one more, I guess, kind of semi-hot, lukewarm topic post-COVID is about managing supply chain risk. And that's
same thing. Yeah, same processes there though.
Yeah, I'd say that would be something I'd I bring more prominently to the strategic sourcing that I teach. Think about where your suppliers are located and think about the risks that those suppliers are going to bring on your supply chain, and what happens if in the event of anything.
It's funny you say that, Martin. The one of the things that I implemented at my old company, and it was the first time it had ever been done, and I'm trying to think of what year it was, probably 2016. I started the use of a risk assessment checklist. It was a manual one, and I had everybody on the sourcing team complete it. And then I aggregated it and sent it to the director of risk management, and he was effusive in his praise about it.
Really, really, yeah, I should imagine, yeah. It's an eye-opener, isn't it?
And then I did a risk planning document. Identified the major risks, stack ranked their probability and impact, listed out mitigation, because we went through the mitigation exercise with the team, assigned ownership with the team, and sent that out to all the stakeholders. And they absolutely loved it. So
if you
being able,
before, that's game changing, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, for them it was. It was unbelievable, right? Now, how do you communicate that? Well, I put together courses in the risk management space that include those checklists and include those templates that will enable them to understand how you can do this manually. When you get to digitization, if you know how to do it manually, then you can do it through digital and innovation.
Yeah, exactly. Good one.
Love it. Okay, this is fabulous. These are excellent conversations because I think we live in a digital world. And I think the sooner we start talking about the digital impact of procurement on human beings and human lives and procurement folks, the more procurement people will grow. So I think these are, yeah.
There's a couple. There's a great guy on LinkedIn that I follow, Daniel. I can't remember his name, but he is all over digitization for procurement. He's wonderful. I'll see if I can find his name, but he's great. I don't profess to understand everything he's talking about. I get the gist, but like I said, it's something that I'm leaving alone for now. Although I recognize its importance to procurement as a whole.
Yeah.
It's funny, in the digitization space, after I started my own business, I picked up a couple of consulting engagements related to sourcing and implementation of digitization. And the first one I did was a needs analysis through a survey and understanding what needed to be done for that particular company and how many different people needed to be involved. The number of stakeholders and what have you. So really, I mean, it becomes a lesson in making sure that you touch base with every stakeholder. If you're in the sourcing space, to understand their needs, because any one of those stakeholders could potentially be a blocker to what you're trying to do in the digitization space. You need to understand people don't like change. So they have to understand the benefit.
Exactly right.
And engaging them early is one of the best ways to get them to understand the benefit and make them feel that they're a part of the decision.
Okay, so Jim and Martin, I'm gonna actually slide in with a very important question. I personally know a lot of people, and I work with a lot of very intelligent children who've dropped out of education as a whole because they think schools and colleges and trainings are too oppressive and they can learn a lot of stuff on their own. Why do you think somebody needs to go through procurement training? Why can't they just learn on the job?
I think it depends on the maturity of the company. There are several companies that have very good training exercise in their onboarding protocols, where they do job rotation as part of the initial 6 months, where they shift from job to job so they understand all the jobs. They get to understand the people in the company, etc. There are others that on the other end don't have any training at all. If you think about it, they hire you to do a job, they expect you to come in fully prepared to do the job. And in the procurement space, that doesn't always work.
Yeah, that's exactly the answer I was thinking, Jim. It's just turns into a lottery depending on the company or your line manager you're working for.
Yeah.
If you know, and that would be
Well,
one of the criteria I'd use if I was
yeah.
to choose the company. One of the criteria would be, you know, what does my training look like over the next couple of years in procurement? What does that look like? Because I, as an ambitious young procurement person, I'm saying that's what I was years ago. As an ambitious young procurement person, you know, I want to develop my skills and capability, and I want to grow my career within procurement. So, what are you going to do for me? And if they can't give you an answer, then that's not the right company for you. But if the person is ambitious enough, then they can go and drive this conversation with their employer and also find resources. But if they don't want to find those resources, I think you're putting a lot down to chance, Devangana. Really, it is a bit of a lottery. So my first employer was Toyota, and they invested heavily in training to do things the Toyota way. So when I left, I wasn't a finished article, and the first time I had to make a decision for myself without layers of bureaucracy and sign off I was paralyzed with fear. But some of those things I learned from Toyota, I'm still using today, which is amazing. But you know, I joined a company that was heavily investing into developing the skills of its people.
Yeah, and you know, and John, you mentioned one thing that, you know, learn how to do things the Toyota way. I mean, if you look at the pharma, you learn how to do things the pharma way. You look at other industries, you learn how to do the things their way. And that's very important, especially when it comes to understanding the policies and procedures of a particular organization, because they are there for a reason, and the reason is to mitigate risk and make sure that the companies are compliant with the governmental rules and regulations that are in place in the country that they're present in, right? And
Yeah.
for some organizations, that changes in every country they're in. So, but one of the things that they need to understand, oh, I lost my train of thought, is that the basics are still the basics. And one of the reasons that I structured my offering the way I did is because I actually had to make the leap and invest in my own development because my company cut the budget when the global recession in 2008 hit. Prior to that, they were willing to invest in supply management education. In 2008, they tightened it up and focused only on sales.
Yeah, so you're at the whims of someone in finance making decisions on your development.
Yeah. So I made the decision, and as far as I know, that's still the same in that company. But making the decision to invest in yourself as a career move. Are you truly interested in the supply management space? Are you truly interested in developing your career and going as far as you can in that career? Are you a new entry coming in from a different department within a particular company at a middle level? And are you willing to invest in yourself? Right.
Spot on.
So those are the kind of things that, if you can market them, and I try to do that, it's very critical to attract customers.
And I think employers now more than ever before need to differentiate themselves, and a point of differentiation could be the training that they provide to make them attractive for new entrants to join.
I love that. This is a really difficult space. I mean, I think it's an interesting space that you're in. And I think it needs a lot of listening more than anything else. I mean, I feel like everything that you need to learn about our environment is through listening. And I feel like both of you must be doing a really, really good job of that, to be in this space. So I'm just gonna get to we've got about 2.5 minutes left. I'm gonna ask my last question at this point, and then I'll leave it to you guys to add anything. But what I mean, I feel like a lot of our work in the space of whatever we're in is dictated by our own personal sense of self and being, what has your life experience taught you that you bring to your procurement trainings? And I feel like it's very different for you, Martin, and very different for you, Jim. What has your life brought to you that you bring to the space of procurement?
Gosh.
I'll
You
t-
go
yeah,
on, Jim.
I'll take a step. Yeah, it's um, over the years, one of the things that I ran into because I was so long with one company is that as the company migrated in their focus from operations to sales revenue, the focus on delivering specific KPIs was not very well communicated. My role had migrated from direct impact with the customers in consumable document management supplies shipped direct to the customers at best price, to working with the internal functions, the shared service functions, and enabling them to improve their processes by while at the same time positively impacting their budgets. To the extent that I was being tasked to do one or the other, relied an awful lot on my ability to satisfy the needs of my customers, and not just my immediate customers, which would probably be, I'll call it level 3, 4, or 5 from the top, but also the requirements of the level 2s, and in one case, the level 1, the CEO, through what I was able to do. And when I said that success brings more work, that's exactly why. If you communicate correctly, if you listen correctly, if you establish a trusting relationship with your internal customers and their leaders correctly, then you can obtain satisfaction by knowing that not only have you met their needs, but they are willing to tell their compatriots in the company about you, and that if they want the same thing, they should reach out to you. And then we had a management change in the supply management space, and my direct supervisor position was eliminated. And in talking with the then vice president, I was told, and this kind of shocked me, it scared me, but it made me feel good at the same time. She said, "I don't know what you do, but keep doing it, because all I'm hearing is good news. I'm not hearing any bad news about your activities."
That's a ringing endorsement in my book.
Yes, it was in mine as well. So I cannot stress, and maybe that colored my outlook in the procurement space and how to approach teaching, is to make sure that whatever I teach, I include all that, because relationship building is so critical to success.
Have I got time to add mine, or are we out of time?
No, go for it. I want to hear, what has your life brought to you that you bring to procurement training, because I think that kind of differentiates you from everybody else.
Oh, that's very kind. So I think having worked in businesses where procurement has been in various states of maturity within that business, so it's had various abilities to influence the business due to its maturity of the function. So what I use in my teachings is to inform people and open their eyes to the true power that good procurement can bring to a business. it's a hugely powerful function. It spans the entirety of the company, you know, and it's in an immature business, it might just be cost reduction or, you know, keeping costs under control, for example. And then you go all the way through to a mature business where we're talking about joint ESG strategies with the suppliers, joint innovation, collaboration on factories, building infrastructure together, and everything in between, risk management, supplier management, innovation. You know, so procurement is it's an amazing function. And I don't think we necessarily sell that well enough to the business. But obviously and when I say sell, my belief, what I teach, is that you have to demonstrate your value by delivering. And then as Jim's point, you know, then your compatriots, your peers and whoever else will start pulling you to join their projects because of the value you've delivered. They can trust you, they rely on you, and you get the job done.
Love that. I love that. And I think both of these are such important aspects that of humanness that you bring to your work. So thank you for sharing this. I'm sure
My
whoever
pleasure.
is listening to get into it would be keen to hear this part. Anything else that you would like to share about what made you take the leap into becoming a procurement teacher? Anything that you feel like you would have liked to share that you didn't get a chance to share?
I shared mine at the front. You were generous enough to give me the time to do that, so I've covered that.
Yeah, and I think I tried to do it. I don't know if the technology interrupted it or not, but just the satisfaction I received early on in my progression to a teacher, starting in 2015, drove me. So, and my experiences within the corporate world from that time forward drove me and shaped me. So, reliance on the human aspect, as you put it, has become so critical. And it clearly shows in my recorded videos, and it clearly shows when I've done live events or live virtual events. I haven't done any live events recently. Hope to in the future, but a lot depends on COVID.
Well, I can be reached on the usual channels, as they say. If anybody has a question.
But I feel like this is
And I can be reached through Procurement League or my website, which is also it's jrmsupplierconsulting.com.
we'll put all of that. So don't worry about it. We'll put all of
Yeah.
that when we post it. But thank you both of you. I think it's a job of bravery to be a teacher in such a busy, hustling space. I have full empathy and I have full listening for that. So just thank you for being our guests and being put in the spotlight and talking about all of this because this is just hard stuff.